As much as I like to say the public is wrong, I think conventional wisdom has it. Missouri and LSU is going to be a wild shootout on Saturday. So let's talk about what promises to be a really exciting football game coming up right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And thanks for making this show your first listen every day. And thanks for telling a friend. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts, including the SiriusXM app. And by the way, of course, you can find Missouri and LSU on the SiriusXM app or on your radio dial, channel 190 for that home Missouri feed. But you know what? After watching after watching LSU take on Ole Miss, I saw the end of that game on Saturday night, but I rewatched the entire thing over the last couple days here. And one thing becomes very apparent quite quickly is that Jayden Daniels is obviously a very, very dynamic runner. He has been ever since his days going back to Arizona State. And with nearly 15 carries for 100 yards last week to go along with over 400 passing and 4 touchdowns, yeah, it's safe to say the Missouri defense is going to have its hands full. This is by far the best unit that the Tigers will have played so far this season. And again, I think much like Brady Cook, I think Daniels looks like a very different guy than what I scouted a couple years ago when Eli Drinkwitz was talking to him pretty heavily, trying to get him to transfer from Arizona State to Missouri. So a little bit of irony here as Brady Cook has hung around, and now, well, two of the best offenses so far, at least so far in this season, are going to be facing off. So an interesting matchup here. For sure, no doubt about that. And really, 3 of those touchdown passes by Jayden Daniels came in the first half on what Robert Griffin on the air called the same exact route. He called him a box fade. I'd call it a slot fade, perhaps. But regardless, Ole Miss was on third down situations, longer passing situations at first, seemed to be daring Jayden Daniels to beat them with quick decision-making and accurate passes over the top of the defense. And, well, Daniels did it. He absolutely called Ole Miss's bluff. There's no question about it. In fact, when LSU's receivers, when Ole Miss was loading the box, whether to either stop the run or, again, force a quick decision by Daniels, really those receivers were abusing Ole Miss over and over again. And Malik Nabers, he's your headliner for sure. He's a little bit more like Luther Burden in that he's probably going to line up all over the field in the slot quite a bit, but he's going to line up outside some as well. Brian Thomas Jr., more of your quintessential sort of outside receiver, red zone threat, a bigger guy. But what's interesting to me is they got explosive plays out of lots of receivers other than Nabers and Thomas. And Mason Taylor was the only real significant target out there with 5 catches for 61 yards. No other guy had more than 2 catches for LSU, but at the same time, those other 4 receivers still combined to catch 6 balls for 127 yards. So obviously all those 4- and 5-star players that LSU has accumulated over the years, even before Brian Kelly, yeah, that's going to show up offensively. But surprisingly, really has not shown up defensively for the Tigers, the LSU Tigers, that is, so far. And we'll get to that defense here in just a little bit. But again, I just think it's interesting that Daniels reminds me a lot of Brady Cook so far. Both guys can absolutely run the football. I think Daniels is an even more dynamic runner than Brady Cook in the open field, quite honestly. But when it comes to passing, so far, when it's been a standard down, first and second down, you've got every play in your playbook opened up. Both guys have looked tremendous. But if you get them to third down, you get them to third and long, you get them to a passing down, an obvious passing situation, well, that can be a little bit of a different story. Hopefully, Missouri and Cook will do better on third downs here, but here's my take on this ball game as we sit here today. I think that the defense that gets the opposing offense into more obvious third down passing situations, third and longs, that type of deal, I think the more of those forced by a defense, I think that's the unit that's going to win this ball game. Now, again, after doing a deep dive into that exciting Ole Miss game, certainly didn't have any reason to adjust my takes about LSU's defense from yesterday. I stand by all of that, but really, I think the LSU offense looks even more impressive than I imagined. Again, you keep them out of third down and long, you're kind of going to be on your heels for the entire game. So it really will be interesting to see how Blake Baker and the Missouri defense chooses to attack this LSU offense. In particular, how do they match up with Malik Nabers in the slot? Of course, Chris Abrams-Drain actually played slot corner for all of 2021 before switching to the outside last season, but he hasn't moved off the ends at all this season that I've noticed whatsoever, or even in 2022. Ever since he made the move from slot corner, he's been off of that. But you know what? Ennis Rakestraw, we've seen at times, has followed a receiver into the slot, in particular against Memphis, against the guy I thought maybe was their best receiver. He definitely followed him around a little bit. So again, it'll be interesting to see how Missouri matches up with Malik Nabers. And also, just defensively, Missouri has played definitely more zone this year than they did last season. A lot of last season was Missouri playing heavy press man-to-man coverage with a lot of blitzing, just kind of daring teams to beat them over the top. I'm not sure that that's going to be the game plan in this one for a couple reasons. Not only because, obviously, LSU's dynamic receiving core, but also Jayden Daniels, having to stop him in the running game. It just seems to me that that's asking an awful lot of your back end to be able to tackle him while everybody else is in man coverage. I just think more zone is going to be effective for Missouri in stopping Jayden Daniels from scrambling, and also from making sure that Missouri doesn't get beat over the top for those big plays against some really good LSU receivers. And a lot has been made in the last week or so about the porous LSU pass defense, but so far the LSU run defense hasn't been a lot to write home about either. So how do I think Missouri and Kirby Moore and Eli Drinkwitz are going to attack this LSU defense? Well, I want to get to that. But first, let's talk about bird dogs, because this time of year, I know it's getting a little bit long for shorts weather, but I don't know, the weather these days, it seems to be sticking around and being hot. So you know what? We're still going to talk about the Bird Dog stretch khaki shorts that are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and give you a truly sculpted look. And we're talking about an anti-stink, sweat-wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. So it's so easy to transition from the golf course to the dinner table, an evening out, pool, workout, lounging, heck, going to work if you're at a shorts-friendly location. It all works for you at Bird Dogs. They're truly functional for any occasion. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege or enter promo code LockedOnCollege at checkout for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you. And if you want the national perspective beyond Missouri, you got to check out Locked On College Football. Kickoff live each Friday. Locked On will go live at 10 a.m. Central on every Locked On College YouTube channel, with the kind of insights only our Locked On College hosts can provide, covering their team every day. Find Locked On College Football Kickoff live each and every Friday at 10 a.m. Central on any Locked On College YouTube channel. You won't want to miss it. And hopefully something that Missouri didn't miss is that Ole Miss was running the ball down LSU's throat as well. Of course, the LSU secondary obviously struggled in that ball game. They were just miscommunications galore from what I could see. It's not as though that unit has no talent whatsoever. Zay Alexander, for instance, looks like their best defensive back to my eyes, to be sure. He'll probably be on Luther Burden for a good chunk of the game. At linebacker, Harold Perkins, those of you who follow the SEC know well that he's one of the best players in the entire country, quite possibly. So it's not as though they have no talent, but again, with just a whole bunch of transfers, which is obviously unusual for an LSU team, sort of the new world order, of course, but at the same time, it just doesn't seem like those units have gelled yet. Also, speaking of transfers, guys who entered the portal, well, former Arkansas player Greg Brooks Jr. spent 3 years with the Razorbacks, now crossed over that rivalry to LSU, speaking of the New World Order. But unfortunately, Greg Brooks Jr. just recently had some serious brain surgery to remove a large tumor from his brain. So obviously best wishes out to that young man. Sounds like he's got a pretty tough recovery ahead of him. All the best wishes in the world. But bottom line is, for this football game, that's an important player that LSU is going to be down for certainly the rest of the season, it looks like, certainly on Saturday at the very least. But again, despite all of the questions, all of the very obvious questions in the LSU secondary, turns out Ole Miss, the Rebels, ran the heck out of the ball against Mekhi Wingo and that front as well. You got Quinshon Judkins with nearly 180 yards on the ground, and maybe the guy with the best name in all of college football, Ulysses Bentley IV, had 9 carries for 90 yards as well. And Jackson Dart, the quarterback, got in on the action with nearly 50 yards, actually exactly 50 yards rushing as well. So the question is, can Missouri run the football like Ole Miss did, especially in the first half? It does worry me a little bit in a game that could be a shootout if Missouri sort of gets off to seemingly its slow start in terms of running the football in the first half. If there's been any complaint about the last 3 weeks of offense for the Tigers, I'd say that would probably be it. It's taken until the second half, maybe even the fourth quarter, to really get the run game going. If that happens to Missouri, I just hope that they don't have some early momentum-killing 3rd and 1s, that kind of thing, that stop a drive and allow LSU to get an early lead. Now, the thing is, whether Missouri is able to run the ball successfully or not, especially early in the game, I think play action is going to work. I think that's something that obviously Kirby Moore, it's going to be a big part of his game plan against LSU, and it should be for the rest of this season. I think that's a rather obvious observation and statement at this point. And frankly, if you look at it statistically, I know conventional wisdom for decades has been, hey, run the ball to set up the play action. And I'm not saying that that doesn't work. What I am saying is there isn't as much of a statistical correlation between success on the ground and success through the air in the play action game as you might expect. In other words, even if you are rushing for 2 yards a carry, you should still fake the play action, and those run fakes still make the safeties, the linebackers, freeze for a second, regardless if runs are working or not. Again, that's, for the most part, that's just massive, massive statistical data there to back that up. Just trust me there. And back to the LSU quarterback, Jayden Daniels, here for just a little bit. And when you did see Daniels with the ball down 6 with 39 seconds to go in the ball game, despite the fact that he led the Tigers into scoring position there at the very end, we didn't see the best of Jayden Daniels in obvious passing situations there. That whole drive, we saw the first play actually was just a simple crossing route, a missed tackle by a Rebel that led to a 42-yard gain. So just a massive play there that gets the Tigers into Rebel territory. Then he nearly throws an interception into double coverage. I thought it was a very, very questionable decision. The next snap, he's frankly bailed out by taking a bad sack along the right sidelines with a horse collar penalties. So instead of taking maybe a 6-7 yard loss, you get a 15-yard gain. And again, I just didn't love some of the decisions and some of the hesitancy from Jayden Daniels if I'm an LSU fan in those moments. But again, it may not matter against Missouri if the Tigers are not able to get the LSU Tigers into third and long situations. When everything is at the disposal, again, much like Brady Cook, Jayden Daniels is a big, big problem. But the Tigers are able to get a lead, if they are able to get into a situation where Daniels is forced to throw more often than not, we should be in pretty good shape. And speaking of third downs, you know what? Missouri has obviously had its struggles on third downs here so far this season. Well, Eli Drinkwitz has a little bit of a theory on why Missouri has been struggling, in particular here the last 2 or 3 weeks offensively on third down, and that'll take me nicely into a bit of an injury update as well, including the likes of Darius Robinson. So let's get there, but first let's talk about FanDuel, where Missouri still is a 6.5-point underdog. Over-under now up to 64.5. You know what? If I had to go with anything on the total, I think I would go under, but to me the value is still on Missouri, just on the side. Either on the money line, plus 205, you get a little bit more than 2-1 on your money there, or just take the 6.5 points. I think this game is much closer to a pick'em than it is a touchdown. But regardless of what you're into right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app's easy to use with spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. So when talking about the Missouri offense a couple days ago, Eli Drinkwitz said, quote, "On third down, to be honest, I think that is part of our struggle. Mekhi," meaning Mekhi Miller, Mekhi is such a reliable guy. You know, we kind of miss having his presence out there. And to some extent, I would definitely agree that missing Miller is part of the problem. He has been very good at getting open on those third down situations and even making some really impressive contested catches in important moments as well, even back to last season. I believe either against Auburn or Florida, I can't remember, but a very important third and long conversion in that ball game. I can remember it was sort of the first time you thought, maybe this Mekhi Miller guy really has a future here, a very promising one indeed. So that'll certainly be something to look at. I think a lot of Missouri's problems on third and long and on third downs in general, or fourth downs, fourth and short for that matter, some of it has just come down to just poor execution at times. A little bit of statistical noise. Like, for instance, I can just remember looking back to that 4th down and 1 play where Missouri faked a handoff, Brady Cook. There was basically an uncovered defender, but a wide open guy in the flat. Would have been an easy first down. Frankly, Cook, despite playing obviously a great game against Memphis, kind of messed that play up a little bit. So again, just a lack of execution there. If he doesn't jump in the air and try to, throw it over the top of the guy, if he just plants his feet and throws around him, it's probably an easy first down. So I think some of it is just Missouri needing to execute their plays a little bit better on third down. But, I just thought that was an interesting point that Eli Drinkwitz brought up. And speaking of injury updates and Eli Drinkwitz says on Darius Robinson basically that it's questionable that he's going to play on Saturday. He does everything he possibly can to get back. It's a soft tissue muscle situation. So we'll attack it and we'll see where he's at and if he can go. I know he wants to go, but if he can't, then we'll operate without him. Okay, not a lot to learn there from Eli Drinkwitz in that particular quote. In fact, if you're saying, John, why did you share it with us? I'm asking myself that question as well. But for real, we did see Darius Robinson, at least there was video of him out there on social media participating in practice this week. So it sounds like he'll probably warm up in pregame, give it a go, much like he did against Memphis. Hopefully he just doesn't strain what I believe is a calf muscle, perhaps a hamstring, but from what I understand, it is a calf muscle for Darius Robinson. Either way, the prognosis on those type of soft tissue injuries are similar. You just got to give it time, see how it responds, and you know what? If you don't do that, it can definitely crop up and be something that continues to bother him all season. So indeed, Missouri does have a really delicate balance to walk there with Robinson and his injury. He's a really, really impactful player, somebody you want back on that line. The transition to defensive end has frankly gone probably as well as I could have expected so far for Darius. Injury problems, though, once again, rearing its ugly head during his career. So, obviously, hopefully Missouri will have him back, and hopefully Missouri will, I don't know, beat LSU. How does that sound to you? That sounds pretty good to me. So, as always, thanks for making Locked On Mizzou your first listen every day. And for you everydayers, I'm going to talk to Locked On LSU's Caroline Fenton tomorrow. So it's been a while since I've done one of these crossover episodes, and it's been even longer since I've had a female voice on this program. So I'm going to knock that 5% female demographic, I think, all the way up to 6 or 7 tomorrow. That's my goal anyway. So until then, until that crossover episode, I will see you tomorrow right here on Locked On Mizzou.